Jeremy Slate, welcome to Grimerica Outlawed. How you doing?
Hey guys, I'm stoked to be hanging out here.
Yeah, this will be a fun one. We got to talk some inside baseball about podcasting. I didn't realize you'd been doing your Command Your Brand for so long, since like going, way back. So that'll be fun to talk to you about sort of the evolution of the new media landscape. And also, Darren's always interested in talking about Rome. So we get to talk about all that stuff too. So what an interesting time to be podcasting. I mean, I can't wait to ask you some questions about what you think about where we're at right now.
Yeah, man, I think it's going to be fun. I've been podcasting like as a host since 2014,
Cool.
and I've been a huge podcast fan before that. I'm a big fan of Adam Curry's work. I've been listening to his show No Agenda for like 15 years or something like that. So podcasting has always been my life, and like now I do it for a living. So it's kind of cool.
Right on. That's an awesome story. I love to hear that.
In the morning.
Yeah, in the morning.
ATM.
Yeah, I'm a bit overboard these days. I cherry pick the episodes when I can, when I have the time to do it. But
I had to apologize. I had to apologize to Adam last year because, like I said, I've been listening for 15 years, and I finally finished my knighthood. 15 years to give him $1,000,
Yeah, I got mine a while back. It's sometimes it's hard because the clips they play from the mainstream media, the dying mainstream media, it gets so frustrating for me just to hear them lying. And so it's one of those love-hate things, right? I love them and I love the way they handle it, but sometimes it's just like, for me, it's too much of a dose of the mainstream, right? I'm almost like rather be willfully blind about what they're actually lying about.
Now's the time though, because they're talking about, because then you don't have to listen to all this RFK crap, and they'll just like find the highlights of Elizabeth Warren going ballistic and just cut it down to go. I was listening live today, and it's funny because I was actually laughing out loud in my truck, and I was just thinking to myself that I appreciate that, because everyone else in traffic with is looking bitchy, and I'm in my truck laughing because Dvorak said something retarded.
It's so lighthearted though too, man, because the jingles and everything just make it amazing. George Clooney is a spy. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, what are you gonna do? It has to be. It's news is depressing, but they happen to make it a whole lot less scary.
Yeah. So what do you think about the? I mean, let's just jump right into the inside baseball a little bit, Dan. I mean, you've had Command Your Brand's been around since 2016. You said
2016, and then I've had a show myself since 2014.
Yeah, right. Okay. So you've been helping people get on shows, like the whole sort of new media PR, I guess, right?
Yeah, we started out as a production house, and I am not very, very technical. So I had tried to figure out how to produce podcasts in this like really wonky way about 15 years ago. And it wasn't very profitable because it was like, all right, it's going to cost you $20,000 a month for me to split the MIDI inputs on your computer and try and mic you in that way, and use a screen recording to record it. 'Cause that was back in the days when people were using call recorder. So it just was
using screen recorder. I remember.
Oh, dude, you remember that? You had to have like a dongle for your dongle to like record anything. So like it was super wonky to like produce a podcast when you weren't in studio with somebody back in the day. So what ended up happening is a large percentage of people we work with like, this is great, but dude, I don't want to host a show. This is too much work. I would love to have some conversations. And that ended up being our focus. Like 2015, we were called Slate Media Productions, and 2016 is when we started working as Get Featured Media, which later became Command Your Brand, and we've been putting people on some great shows since, man.
So have you noticed what I've noticed is a big change in, like we used to have researchers on, like, let's say Ancient Mysteries and all that kind of stuff. Like a lot of the authors and researchers, we'd have them on, they'd come on these alternative podcasts but now it's, now that it's so easy to host, I guess it's probably changed quite a bit since 2016, that now everybody has their own podcast, and all the researchers have their, all the researchers and authors have their own show. So it seems to be like, because
it doesn't mean they all should though, because some of them are terrible hosts, but they're great guests.
Yeah, that's true. Or some they just want to put out their own stuff, so they have another output for their research instead of just writing books or whatever. They can actually,
you need a mediator between them and the layman,
Yes.
Because that's the problem with a lot of them is these guys get on there and they're going on and you're like, what the fuck is what?
Well, Darren, I think that's the reason I've won so much with talking about Rome for the last year, because like I'm not a midwit, but I'm a little bit above that. So like I can talk about history like a regular person. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of historians, they love to use big words and things like that. So like the first thing I did out of grad school is I wrote a book about the Emperor Augustus, but like all the titles were in Latin. So it was like, because I wanted to like be really, really cool. And that doesn't communicate to anybody. I feel like for a lot of these guys, they do need that mediator, right? Because they don't translate in a way that speaks to humans, man.
And you've been connecting like big name guys to platforms, right? Has that changed in the last few years at all?
Well, it's kind of the thing that's been interesting, and I don't know if you guys have observed this kind of being in the space for a bit. Like, there's kind of been like ebbs and flows of podcasting. If this makes sense. Like, there was kind of the early days of podcasting, right? The 2012 and before that times where people were early on taking audiobooks, recording them themselves. I think there was like LibriVox and stuff like that back in the day. They would throw it up and you'd start listening to the audiobook. You'd be like, wow, this is terrible. Let me find another one that sounds, it's the same book, but read by somebody else. So there was that part of it. But there was also like hosts like Rogan and people like that had been going for a really long time. Then there was kind of this entrepreneurship phase in podcasting where everybody and their brother jumped in and did a 30-minute podcast, and they had like a fire round or lightning round or something at the end where they're going to ask everybody the same 10 questions. That was around like 2015 to 20. What's that?
We went through that exact phase.
It was 2015 to 2017. Yeah. It was kind of like the first peak.
Oh my God, we had 13 questions podcast, and it was like the same 13 questions for all these guests. Like, oh my God.
So everybody was kind of doing the same format because the idea was like podcast was going to be like the new center of being an internet marketer. I'm going to use this and I'm going to sell this course and this book and this product. So it was like the centerpiece of that. That kind of died out around 2019, 2020. Like the pandemic kind of changed people's buying habits dramatically. And we saw kind of this drop and secondary rise in podcasting, if that makes sense. Like 2019 to 2020, we saw this drop. Pandemic happens, then we see this rise again. But what we saw is a lot of corporate media and people trying to get into podcasting. Like, sure, some of them had been here a long time. You know, you have like your Wondery and NPR and some of these, but they've tried to do the idea. This is another thing that Curry says, like, you can't monetize the network. These guys have been trying to take their formula that worked in TV and radio and everything else and just shove it into podcasting. And if you remember last year, NPR laid off, gosh, I can't remember. It was a large percentage of their workforce in their podcasting. And you had the mainstream media reporting, oh my gosh, is podcasting dead? And it's like, podcasting's doing great. It's the problem is these big behemoths trying to take the same strategy that worked in other media and shove it in. So now I think we're in this really interesting world where I don't know a good way to describe it. It's almost like podcasting has democratized in a way because the technology has come up to such a level that anybody can produce a really good show at a low cost. And so you are having bigger shows pop up with people that do deserve a platform that maybe couldn't have had it before. So I think we're in a really kind of interesting, I don't know if you want to call this the third wave of podcasting now, but it kind of feels like where we're at.
That's a good point. Do you have any examples about how the mainstream tried to like bring their process over? Like just the way they do their interviews or the music in the background, all that, like, because now listening to some of those overproduced ones, they just sound gross now. Right?
It's the size of it, right? Because you look at what was it? Serial was the big one a number of years ago. They saw that as the model, right? And it was successful because of the content, not because of how it was produced. But what they thought is, okay, well, we're going to have 5 editors. We're going to have 3 people doing audio. We're going to have a boom mic guy. We don't even do video, but we're going to have 7 lighting guys. They had these things that were so overproduced, just like they would do for television. And I think the thing that's different about podcasting is, can you make some money in podcasting? Absolutely. But it's not the same as it would be in kind of that corporate money world of things, where their idea is built on an advertising model, right? A cost per 1,000. So if you can get a high CPM or a high number of thousands on an episode, then you can make money per advertising. And the thing I've found and a lot of other podcasters have found over the years, frankly, the thing we all make more money off of are affiliate deals on products we really like or services we really like. For a lot of standard media, they don't know how to do anything with that because that's not something they can run the same type of system they are with. Okay, so you have 5,000 downloads, we pay $25,000 per 1,000. So we're going to pay you $100 flat for your episode or for the rate. So they were really, I think, undervaluing podcasts and the way they were done and trying to take that same radio system and shove it in. And I think where we are now, there's so much more here that's untapped. And frankly, you see in the last election, it swung a presidential election. This is really the direction people are going. And I think we really are just in the beginning of something brand new.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Darren.
Well, I think that it is going to extend to the advertisers. I think that, this would kind of go against what John and Adam would say. But if you're not doing because the podcasting and all that is kind of this weird, it's like a decentralization or a breaking up into smaller entities. It's kind of exactly what you were just talking about, how it's like you can't have these huge teams and you can't have these huge networks. They tried doing the network thing with podcasts, and I can't even remember what that shit was called, but that didn't work either.
Well, you had people like Lewis Howes and stuff like that joining the Inspiration Network, which I don't think those things even exist anymore. Where they were trying to like
one too, though. Remember there was that big one that had like Noah, fucking the Noah dude. What is his name?
Noah Kagan?
Nah, the
Like
one
Pandora
from
or something like that. One of those.
Yeah, it might have been
Panoply?
Pandora. Nah, the Noah from like the Daily Show.
Oh
The
gosh,
half guy, you know?
well, like
you're talking
Podcast
about the
One?
Extreme one, yeah.
It was one of those ones where they were going to charge you so much a month, and then they gave all these people a bunch of money to start doing the podcast, and then it just, turned into a giant sort of money pit. But that, I think that, and I hate to say that those guys are missing anything, but when they talk about the advertising model failing, I don't see any reason why the advertising model, and this isn't a defense of advertising either, but I don't think the advertising model needs to fail. Just the same as why should we expect that the bottom's going to completely fall out of the advertising world and it's completely gone and we don't do that anymore?
Mm-hmm.
But because that's not what happened with, that's not what happened with media. If we take the mainstream out of it, there's still people are watching more video content than ever.
It's the trust.
They're not watching TV every night and watching cable news, but they're watching more video than ever. They're watching video on the train. They're watching video on the plane. They're watching video in their car while they're fucking driving half the time. So they're listening to more and watching more than ever before. It's just not centralized. And I don't see any reason why advertising isn't set to go the same route. It's just, you're not going to have giant behemoth contracts. You're going to see that market disintegrate too into a bunch of sort of what you're talking about. The advertising side of that is the guy who's giving you the affiliate. They're trying to find shows that fit their niche that maybe only have 10, 50, 100,000 listeners per and go that sort of route. I think advertising is going to stick around. It's just going to get a lot smaller and
because they're used to like what they used to do with radio. Like, hey, we have these 5 stations and these 5 stations have X number of listens, and the big stations would bring up the numbers from the small stations, and they kind of had an idea of what they're listening to, but not quite an idea of who's listening to them. So I think they're still stuck on that model. And I do agree with you in the long run. I think it'll actually be more profitable for them if they do learn how to change the model and kind of individualize it a bit more. But I think for a lot of the larger companies, they're still stuck in the change in that model because it's a corporate mindset.
Yeah, and the thing about that is it could actually make that relationship a little bit better, where the CPM goes up and everybody's happy about it, because maybe your CPM goes up 5x or 10x, but your conversion rate is going up 10x too, because you found your niche. You're not just trying to sell razors on sports radio. It's just like you said, throwing mud at the wall and seeing what sticks. You've got a bunch of people that are sort of interested in that sort of thing. We've got probably more advertising opportunities than we've ever had in the last. I get emails. Actually, Libsyn fucking emailed last week asking.
Oh, because they bought AdvertiseCast a few years ago.
Yeah, so they're asking us again. I've already told them no once. I love Rob Walsh. He's a great guy. He's been helping us out from day one. We self-host most of our stuff, everything actually, but we do still use, by the time we went and self-hosted, we had so many subscribers on Libsyn that, they say you can transfer that feed, but I'm like, I am not fucking with this.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you disappear from someone's podcast player, then you're looking at a 5 or 10% are going to track you down again.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if this is going back a little bit. This is like 5 years ago, but do you remember I used to listen to his show a lot. I really don't check in anymore, but the Tim Ferriss show, he was doing, one of his big things was the products he hawks, right? Because in all his books, he's always saying like this product or whatever it might be. He did the same thing on his show where people looked at it as a recommendation for him. People really liked the products he talked about because he only recommends products he uses. So then he had tried to go to Patreon. And what ended up happening is people actually were giving him less money and sending him emails demanding that he bring advertising back because they wanted to see what products he was using, what products he liked, because they saw his recommendation is really good. So I think people that can become good with the type of products they promote, and they are really things that you use, because these are people you're building a relationship with, right? People are listening to you on a weekly basis. Number one, you don't want to mention something that isn't a good product, right? Because they're also just going to trust you less. But I think number two, people want to use the things you're using if they like you and trust you. And I think that's exactly what Tim Ferriss found. He went, as I said, this is 5 years ago, but he changed his model back and went back to a Patreon model.
That's
interesting.
Fascinating. Yeah. Interesting.
We never got any of that advertising money ever.
No, ever. No, we never. We always just went the no agenda route, except we do have like this Outlawed has a premium feed. Like, so the second half of all of our shows are premium based, but we still
probably hear us ragging on us. I mean, I swear they're talking about us half the time, every episode where they like make a point to directly diss premium content.
I don't know. I mean, I heard Adam say that Matt Taibbi was value for value in his Substack, and I'm like, he's not. He's got a premium model too, dude. So half the time they're wrong about it.
His is okay, but ours is no good.
Yeah. So I mean, the other thing I was thinking of when you mentioned the shift during COVID, like during the the sort of the pandemic, is that was when a lot of big podcasts came about. It seemed like they sort of became more popular. Like, let's say the Dark Horse or some of the maybe traditional YouTube channels as well. And I think experts in the field started getting involved and putting their voice out there. So it was good that they had a platform. But have you noticed at all with the growth that some seem to grow at a weird rate, like exponentially? Like, some people are allowed to talk about certain things in YouTube, for example, and others seem to get censored all the time. Like, have you noticed a little bit of any nefarious like algos with the new narrative network or anything like that?
I know that I really can't talk about anything I want to on YouTube. So I think any of our good stuff's on Rumble at this point in time. And it's, I guess here's the struggle in that, like looking at 2020 and kind of what happened. A lot of people were like listening to mainstream media and like, wow, I really don't trust this. So then what ended up happening is you had a lot of the podcasts and new media saying, okay, well, we're going to talk about what's actually happening. Then you had the YouTube apocalypse, which was, what was that, like 2021 when they did that? They just started banning accounts for literally anything. They did a partnership with the WHO, and they're kind of like, hey, you can't talk about anything that we don't agree with here. So a lot of people started running to Rumble. It's good and it's bad, because I don't know what you guys have had as the experience on Rumble, but it doesn't have an algorithm, which is good and it's bad, right? So if you come and you already have a large number of people, well, you have a large number of people. For new people, discoverability is really hard. Yeah. And I know that's something that Rumble's talked about, and I do hope that it's something that they handle or change at some point in time, because discoverability does have to be easier, because you literally can talk about anything on there, which is awesome. YouTube, it's become really, really hard as a health individual to have a lot of the conversation you need to have, because it's policed on the WHO policy.
Right.
So
you think that'll change with the US?
Even the biohackers and like,
I hope so. I really do, because it's become, I've seen a lot of people in natural and holistic health have started to run away from YouTube. But like, you even look at like Dr. Eric Berg, right? He has a huge health YouTube channel. Well, they saw their traffic drop off by like 50% because it wasn't things YouTube agreed with. So then he started trying to build a Rumble channel. So I think this is the real problem we do have to solve. When you're looking at what's growing really well and growing easily, this is going to sound ridiculous. Sports shows are growing really well and really easily. You know why? I'll have to admit it, man. I am subscribed to 3 different Yankees podcasts because people want to have their sports, and it's not really dangerous. It's not really dangerous for these advertisers and all of these platforms for you to talk about sports. So if you look at that, that's out there. Comedy podcasts are kind of hit and miss because a lot of comedy podcasters in the last couple of years have talked about the things that we shall not talk about. So you've had people like Bill Burr are totally fine, where people like Joe Rogan aren't. So that's one area you have to look at as well. So it's tough, man, because it's hit or miss, and it's you talking about approved narratives. If you're not, well, then it's going to be very hard to grow.
Yeah, discoverability is kind of out the window if you're talking about non-approved narratives. I mean, that's what we've noticed. Yeah.
So you have to kind of either have the right audience, or you have to have people that are willing to promote you as well. So I know a lot of people, even like what Union of the Wanted does, having a bunch of guys on that you can all talk a little bit about what you're doing. I think things like that do help others to grow and do help others to get attention. But at the moment, I think things are going to start changing because X has opened up, because that Facebook has had to open up a little bit too. They actually, I think YouTube. I read and YouTube. And I read yesterday that I think Meta has to pay a $20 million settlement to Trump for banning him from after the election. So I do think we're starting to see things change the other way. And I am excited to see the direction this goes. Because dude, I want to be able to talk about more stuff on YouTube, because I used to make a lot of money on YouTube, literally just for promoting for creating content, because we have a monetized channel, but it's become much harder to do things like that.
Yeah. Do you think we're at a saturation point yet with new media and with the content, or is it always going to be just sort of like people will trickle off at the bottom and the cream will rise to the top kind of thing?
Well, the thing you have to look at, the last time I looked, so it's been a few months, there's about 3.5 million podcasts out there, according to Spotify. And once again, whichever platform you look at is going to say more or less, whatever it might be. But let's say on average, there's like 3 to 4 million podcasts out there. The number that's been pretty consistent since like 2017 is 18 to 20% of those are actually active. Now, What does that mean? You can see a show where they haven't produced an episode in 6 months, a year, 2 years, year and a half, whatever it is. Some of these people I'm always questioning, like, are they still paying their hosting? Like, geez, man, like you're just throwing away that money every month. But there's a small percentage of podcasts that are actually active. And I think because of that, we really are pretty far from a saturation point. I don't think a saturation point is coming anytime soon. We've had various saturation points, if that makes sense. As I mentioned, 2017 to 2020, you had kind of the internet entrepreneur podcasts. They hit a saturation point because people couldn't really listen to any more of those because they were all the same thing. And then you had kind of all the Patriot podcasts that popped up and during the pandemic. And I think a lot of those have started to kind of run their course. So I think there's ebbs and flows. I think as long as you are making content that matters for you and the people that you want to talk to, I think you'll be fine, right? Like I've been able to talk a lot about historical things that don't get covered a lot. Like we just did an episode on the Oklahoma City bombing, which was really good. Or I've done a lot of stuff on the Roman Empire, since that's what my background's in. I think if you really make content that works for you and the people you're servicing, you'll be fine. I think if you are jumping on a next, pattern or trend or whatever it may be, or, trying to read the Q tea leaves on the internet and then make a podcast about it, you're very got a kind of a short timeline, man.
What do you think?
I would have to push back on that, man. These tea readers are going to be making hay. They've been making hay for a couple thousand years. And they're going to keep fucking making hay. You remember?
They got to make more tea leaves to read, though, man.
They were selling the psychic shit on the fucking. That was like the late night infomercials. Even they were like, remember Jojo the psychic? Yeah,
but do you remember? Like when the pandemic first happened, and there was like hundreds of these like Q accounts that popped up. Do you guys remember this? And they were all like decoding and doing all this stuff, and everybody was watching them, and they're getting tens and thousands of views, and like they're all gone because it was kind of
some people have still drank that Kool-Aid.
Well, what do you predict? What do you predict coming up in the next 4 years? Then I mean, not that 4 years, but the next trend, the next wave, like.
Before we get to that, I wanted to just point out that when we had Curry on the show with his new podcast indexing, Podcasting 2.0, the numbers he gave us were even less than that. He's like, you could take that number. You could take that number. It's about 4 million is a good average. And he's like, 10% of them have uploaded in the last year. And then another 10% of that are active in the last 90 days. So he had that number at under 100,000 podcasts that have uploaded an episode in the last 90 days.
Wow. Okay. Well, I was thinking around 250,000. So that's even half of that.
Yeah, I would say it's right around that 100,000 mark. Yeah. And then when you niche that off, it gets even You know, it gets. I think that there's still, because what the other thing that happens is, the other crazy stat that they throw out there is 95% of podcasts never got past episode 7, which is a running joke around here because our buddy started a show and he ended on episode 7. I mean,
There you go.
the average.
So
What are
let's
you gonna
assume
do?
let's assume that the censorship's going to get better, like it is, like the narrative
it is.
shifting, like that. So then and X is in a weird spot because they're. It seems like they're not controlling the content as much. I mean, who knows what's going on behind the scenes, but it's really becoming like you go there for latest news. Like when we were seeing some of the hearing confirmations the last couple of days, like it's like right up to date. There's people like recording and providing. It is almost becoming the mainstream media in a lot of ways. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few years. And then like, what about the people that are like the exodus from X that have gone to Blue Sky, like that kind of thing? Like what's going to happen with the bubbles that are calling Elon a Nazi?
Gosh, man, I still haven't used Blue Sky, so I don't know that much about it. I know it's a thing. I know people make jokes about like Blue Sky pedos, but that's about all I'm aware of. In terms of X, like, so here's the problem. I'm still on the fence on X, right? Like I love it. It's the platform I use the most. I use it more than any other social media platform. But here's the thing that concerns me. They want to have your money on there. They want to have all these other things on there. Monetization, it's a cool strategy, but then you also have people that have tried to figure out how to, jack the numbers up on monetization by like doing clickbaity stuff. So is it ever going to be perfect? No, I think it is I think it is the better platform out there. It's the one I kind of look for everything on. Like, my wife will ask me, and social media and things like that.
We're losing you.
We're losing. Yeah, I'm also losing. Come
Yeah,
on,
you're frozen.
I'm free.
Oh yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully he comes back. Hopefully he comes back soon. The challenges of podcasting without being live in studio.
Live in studio gets expensive.
Imagine sort of bringing somebody out to the middle of nowhere to do a podcast. I mean, we'd have to do something like this.
If we had way more supporters, I'd do it. We could just rent an office over by the airport.
Are you back yet, Jeremy?
My ex is a fucking train wreck.
Yeah.
You're still chopping up. You're still don't have a connection.
Oh, it's looking better.
There we go. That looks better.
Okay. I literally don't know what happened. I'm in the exact wired in spot I'm always in.
Okay, interesting. Okay, well, you're back. It seems good now. So we lost you at, I think, your wife. You're talking about X and your wife, maybe?
Oh, so like, she'll ask me a question and I'll.
Oh.
You can't bitch about X on Starlink, man.
He just dropped right off.
You can't bitch about X on Starlink.
Yeah, I don't know if he's on Starlink. He said he was wired in, so unless
I'm
you
on Starlink though.
Oh,
but I bitch about Elon all the time. So
yeah.
Well,
you better not bitch about him anymore. He'll kick you off again now that you're back on. So we're just going to assume that he's going to pop back in here.
I'm just going to I'll take the 5th on Elon.
Take the 5th.
I'm not saying because I might incriminate myself.
Yeah.
I still don't trust him though.
Guys, our internet was out. I think we're good now. So
right.
hopefully it cooperates. No, I was saying if I want to ever answer a question, I just go to X and I've got the answer like immediately. Like, oh,
yeah,
XYZ news story, or what has this person said, or I'm trying to find this clip. Like I find it's easier to find a clip on X than it is even on YouTube because I can put in like what the person said in the clip and it actually comes up. So I use it for a lot of stuff, and it's the platform I use the most because I've kind of found this like clutch of people that like to talk about ancient history, which is what I do all the time. So it's been good for that. I'm just a little concerned that we might be getting too much like WeChat or something. But I guess all social media has that ability to go that direction, So it's a interesting balance, right?
And
I know. And so far, what Darren?
Facebook is closer.
Yeah,
I think so because you don't, I mean, you see some sites that'll let you use X for two-factor authentication, but almost every single one will let you use Facebook. Facebook's got that incorporated a marketplace into it, so now they're taking on that sort of thing. Facebook's now got this whole fucking dating thing going on. Facebook seems to, be more into that. I mean, eventually they're all just going to get together and hammer.
Wait, where are you guys on TikTok? Because I struggle on this one because you have like, I have an account. Nobody watches anything I post on there. We post all the time. Nobody watches anything I post. So like I could kind of be with it or without it. But then you have some guys that are like national security, and then you have other people that are like, it's the reach. Like I'm on the fence on this one. And then you have.
What do you think about what the No Agenda guys say about it?
What's that?
Well, that it's all about the sales aspect of it.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I've done the TikTok store and all that stuff, and that's what it's all about. They want those algos because no one over here has quite figured out how to make those, to the point that after I listened to those two talk about
they were just talking about this.
Yeah, right after I heard it, I text my wife and I was like, because she does the we have an audiobook, not just an audiobook, we have a publishing company called Adult Brain that's got a bunch of books and a bunch of audiobooks, and she does posting for it every day to just, trying to get something. And I said, like, you got to make a TikTok account because none of this stuff we do is safe for TikTok. Like that, there's out of all of them, TikTok seems to be the most like clamping down on anything.
Just recently, more recent though.
No, the whole time, every time I fucking have tried to go to TikTok and do anything, because I tried making a TikTok account like a year ago or a year and a half ago, but it's like everything I post gets community guideline, whether it's about guns or weather control, or it's like everything. And then like it'll wear off and I'll go there. So I'm like, well, screw this, because what'll happen is you'll get something, it'll get a couple thousand views, you'll get guidelined, and you're for like 2 months, you won't get 50 views on a video. And then it'll wear off. I'll go there and I'll post. I just posted some Jim Lee stuff and they gave me a guideline strike again. And I was like, I can't exist here. This is not a platform that's friendly for even the toned down version of Grimerica.
Well, the thing I struggle with as well, like, is people talking about, like, so I don't know if you guys have followed the stories coming out recently about, they're like, oh, the U.S. government should own 50% of it. That's terrifying. Microsoft should buy part of it. That's terrifying. So, like, how do you guys feel about the whole, like, how they've been trying to sell it thing? What
I want Mr. Beast to buy it, and like,
he'd have to get funding though, wouldn't he? Because he doesn't personally have the money.
I don't think that guy would have any trouble rounding out some funding. I don't think he does personally. I think he's got about $1 billion.
Yeah,
about $1 billion. I don't know. I mean, my opinion is that that some government agency owns them all at the end of the day. So what's the difference?
Well, that's been my concern. Like, right? Like the reason,
as long as we're going to talk about Elon, I mean, to not think that Elon is the ultimate front guy for the government. I mean, they're not even trying to hide it. All of his money is just getting handed to him from the government. PayPal subsidies, Tesla subsidies, rockets subsidies, Starlink subsidies, electric cars subsidies, boring tunnels subsidies. I mean, the government is just handing him money to make businesses.
Well, I think with TikTok, the actual problem is not that I think the Chinese government is like this like safe and non-nefarious actor. Like I think most governments are just nefarious actors. But the CIA doesn't want any like competition. They see this, they're like, wait, they're getting more information than us. We got to stop that and own that thing so we can get more information than them. I think it's kind of like a intelligence agency competing thing.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think that our intelligence agencies own every single other one.
Yeah,
I would say. Yeah. So we should do we have anything else? Do you have anything else you want to get into around here, Graham? Or because I wouldn't start getting this would, before we transition into the Rome stuff, I wouldn't mind talking about, and I don't even know what this is, but it was in the thing that Rebecca sent me about you, was the Maoist Technocracy, which is another sort of thing that I think the transgender stuff all fits into. If you've been listening to No Agenda, obviously that's all going to make sense right away. So I wouldn't mind unpacking that a little bit and then talking about some Rome stuff.
Well, and this goes right into what we've been talking about, because the concern is, and this is my concern with all of these apps, is a social credit score being created. That's the big concern. well, you can't talk, your social credit score isn't high enough, or, you can't have money, your social credit score isn't high enough. And if you look at have you guys seen any of the videos of like what's happening with people's social media in China? Like that they can't go shopping, they go to the store and try to like scan their phone and they can't buy anything. So it's a real thing there. And I think to understand a lot of what we've been going through here, it's important to understand Mao's cultural revolution. How aware are you guys of like the cultural revolution in China? Obviously, I'm not an expert in it, but
a little bit. Yeah.
But when you look at what Mao did, he divided people between different identities you could have. You had black identities, which are things you didn't want to be, a business owner, somebody took pride in their community, a family. These were things you did not want to be. And then there were what called red identities, good communist identities, things you wanted to have. You could be a revolutionary, you could be this, you could be a student. These are all things you wanted to be. And if you look at a lot of what's been happening in the past few years, whether it's, you could be an ally if you had the right, gender ideology, even if you yourself weren't trans or whatever it might be. So you could join one of these groups and be okay. It's very much a simplicity of it is comparing it to cultural Marxism, like creating different groups and having them kind of drive against each other. And that's exactly how Mao was able to change China, is he created these groups that you wanted to be part of an approved group. And that's a lot of what we've been seeing, especially from 2020 through 2024. You see the George Floyd riots, you see a lot of the race stuff that's been happening. You see a lot of the stuff happening around environmentalism. This stuff is driving so that people can have a good red communist identity. And I think what you're seeing on social media is how managed people's speech was being. It is very much leaning towards more of a social credit score. Now, I think as we kind of went towards the election, things have started to change dramatically because people saw the top presidential candidate get shot and somebody tried to go after him multiple times, where you started to see the tide change a little bit. So I think people are actually becoming more aware. But at the same time, these tech companies have to start to turn around, because do you guys really believe that Zuckerberg has changed his opinion just because an election changed and he grew his hair a little bit longer? I don't think so. And so I think we still have to be concerned with what a lot of these groups are doing. And we have to make sure even the coziness of Trump and Elon, at the same time, is he letting Elon get away with more than he should? So I think these are things we really have to be concerned with. And it goes right along what we've been talking about.
Yeah, that revolution. I mean, that they had pitted, kids against their parents. I mean, it's very similar to what's happening now with the. Well,
you had COVID. You had people turning people in for not wearing a mask. It's a very similar type of system.
Yeah, and even now with the kids, if they want to transition, they can keep it away from their parents. I mean, all this kind of stuff is happening.
It's insane.
So how come so much pushback in the West compared to the East? And because Mao was able to pull this all off in like 2 or 3 years in a system without internet and pretty slow, what's the difference between that and the West, that with all that technology and putting it right in the palms of everybody's hands, there was still too much pushback? I mean, maybe we don't know yet, but it seems like the pendulum is heading quickly in the other direction.
The pendulum has started to swing, which is good, right? I think that's definitely a good thing. But here's the problem, Darren and Graham. Here's the problem. People go towards what's easy and what's comfortable, right? Oh, it's so easy to use my cell phone to pay for things, or it's so easy to do these different things. I think what you have to look at is how much liberty are you sacrificing for easiness? And I think not to say that you have to go, use 2 sticks to start a fire in your house. You know what I mean? Not to say that, but you have to look at how much liberty am I giving up for the easiness of some of these technology pieces? Because you start to become part of that world, and then eventually you don't have a choice. So I think it's understanding what is the balance between how much liberty and how much freedom have I given away for easiness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, even though Elon's saying all the right things right now, even though he's getting called a Nazi, I mean, he is trying to, I feel like he genuinely believes that humanity took a turn there when he helped Trump win the election. But I mean, who knows? How do we protect ourselves from him changing his mind, or somebody else, buying it off of him and then doing it, or whatever, is going to happen in the future, right? I mean, that's why I think you're right to be scared about these all-in apps.
Well, I had a conversation about 2 years ago on my show with Batya Ungar-Sargon from Newsweek, and she was talking about the thing that she's concerned about with Musk. If you look at his Tesla factory, or his big Tesla showroom in China, it's actually in the area where they're arresting a lot of these Uyghurs, and he's not saying anything. So you have to be concerned, is he somebody that in each country he's in, says the right things so that the government helps him do the things he wants to do. Because as you mentioned, government contracts, right? He gets very similar types of things done for him in China. So that, to me, knowing that, and after that conversation with Batya, I've been a little bit on the fence of, well, is Elon just kind of playing to the crowd in each country he's in?
It's kind of getting harder to do that in 2024, though. It's like they'd have to be not seeing his Twitter account somehow. I mean, he owns a place, so he could have a totally different.
Not seeing his Twitter.
Maybe he's not seeing. He's not
seeing his Twitter account.
Oh, you got to be careful, man. He might do a Roman salute for you again.
I don't think you can verbalize.
He might throw his heart out to you.
Turn that into a verb. I'm not sure.
So here's the thing: is I know he didn't intend to do that, but when I searched for that video, I fell over laughing because I'm like, the one thing like that you would tell somebody not to do is that, and he did. Dude, like I know that's not what he meant, but like that's the one thing you don't do.
Why even like drive past the house, man? Like,
exactly.
You don't even need to like go anywhere near it. You don't need to. Oops. I mean, you can post all the pictures in the world, but on the day that they're losing their minds, just like steer
exactly. That was probably like the one thing they told him not to do. Like, you can do anything you want. You can break dance, you can spin, you can yell, you can do the Howard Dean yell. Just do not do a Roman salute.
So
how do you think that? Is it a 230 thing? Because YouTube's got to be subject to 232, right? Section 230. I feel like that's the lever that something could be done in the next 4 years to correct it.
I don't know, because like I don't know if you guys just like the 230 conversation has kind of just like died. I haven't heard anybody talk about it in a year. So it was like
one of our Canadian politicians is all over it these days.
Really? Like, so at least in the media I listen to, I've heard like nothing about Section 230 all of a sudden.
Yeah,
last year or so.
She's kind of drunk half the time, so I don't know.
Well, I think you're not hearing a lot about it, but I think it's probably getting talked about behind closed doors.
Sure.
I mean, why else is Meta switching his policy? The push towards free speech on these platforms to me is a 230 thing. It's like because I don't trust that any of them are doing the right thing on purpose. So it's going with like a protectionism, a self-preservation thing, because
I agree.
It makes more sense to go because the 230 things going one way or another after I think, I mean, we'll see what Trump does, but I think what you're going to see is like that. I haven't read it. So have you looked into what is this executive order on free speech on social media?
I haven't read that one. So I'm going to, there's been so many executive orders, man, I can barely keep up. There was one that came out yesterday on like anti-Semitism. It's like, how can you even regulate that? So it's like, it's been a bit to keep up with them all.
And not only how can you regulate it, but the regulations sound scary.
Yeah. Like you can regulate my thoughts? What? No, don't do that.
We can deport you for showing it. I mean, in Canada, you're not allowed to do that kind of stuff anyway. It's illegal.
Well, they kind of can. They look, the one side has been able to do that. They've been able to support terrorist organizations when they want. So these things are never fairly executed either. It is a two-tier system, and I think in all the Western countries it seems right now. So, but I have a prediction. This might sound really crazy. I wasn't even going to say it this early on, but I'm afraid that if it almost seems like the pendulum could swing so hard that the media and the establishment starts to support. They might realize they've lost the climate change battle, all these things, and they might start to support this and throw the other side under the bus. I mean, that's what would scare me. Is I would be really wary of the right if the establishment all of a sudden switched and started to support them.
Well, it's the same reason. When the government tells me aliens, I don't believe they're real, right? Like, so it's like it's tough, man. Because at the same time, that is a huge concern. Because
aliens are real too. So I mean,
exactly right. Like to see things swing that, but to see this public opinion swing that much, like what is true and what is not true, I think that is a real struggle.
The only aliens they're worried about are the ones picking their vegetables.
Yeah, there was a New York Post article this morning that said yoga moms are not going to be able to have berry smoothies because Trump is deporting people, and it's like, what? That's a problem?
What do you want colored people picking your fruit? Thought we moved past that, or people of color. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I am a BIPOC. So I have a pass. I'm a black.
I am very white, so I can't say anything.
Yeah, you look pretty white guy. Nice mustache though. You get
Thank you.
extra points for that. I'm
Thank you.
half white, so best of both worlds. I'm a BIPOC white.
You're half Indian. Should say half Indian, not half white.
That's a pretty racist thing to say. No, I would argue. Actually, I was arguing with some people on X today that the pendulum has already swung on the mainstream media, and then they were like, and I pulled up on the thing. The perfect example of all the big tech companies, all the people that donated money to Trump's inauguration.
Yeah, but that's
the thing I was going to say. Like, you know,
all the ones that
Bezos
hated him were on there. Yeah,
Bezos likes Trump.
Apple, Tim Cook.
Zuckerberg likes Trump. Tim Cook. What? No, they don't suddenly like Trump. They just kind of were like, don't kill us.
And we've seen the mainstream media messaging subtly changing in the last 6 months to a year as well, where, you know, there is still some crazy Trump derangement syndrome out there, but you're not seeing it so much on the networks anymore. There's like some outliers that are still hanging on, but because you can't just reef the steering wheel. I would say that whole mainstream narrative, we've already seen the shift starting on that.
Well, maybe, but my worry goes a little deeper than that. It goes to the point where, like, if people are calling people Nazis again, it's okay to punch a Nazi in the face is a thing. So if there's, all it does is open up the possibility that if there's any kind of false flag or any kind of attack, then, you know, the right and the establishment backing it will go nuts. I mean, and it'll become what we've all been afraid of, you know. That's my worry.
Yeah, it's happening 100%.
I'm so tired of that old trope, though. Like,
I know,
like the Nazi thing. I'm so done with it because it's like everybody's apparently a Nazi. I don't quite understand.
I know, but then he put his hand up and it did it. It wrecked a whole bunch of people, dude. He did it. The problem is he threw his heart out and it sent a whole bunch of people reeling. It was the what do you call that? The straw on the camel's back for a lot of people, I bet.
Yeah.
There's plenty of evidence that
it was real.
You know what? I'm going to save that. I'm not going to finish that comment. I'm going to finish that comment in the second half of the show because
you got to remember all of our faces are on here, Darren.
Yeah, my member. Yeah. I was going to say something.
Guilt by association.
That could have been a little fucking crazy there. We will talk about it a little later though, because there's only like 250 people that are signed up for Plus anyway, and they all know what's up. So I think. I mean, okay. So before we go to second half of show, I'm just gonna read what my chat GPT has to say about the new emergency authorization. So on January 20th, 2025, President Donald Trump signed the executive order titled Restoring Freedom of Speech and Ending Federal Censorship. This order aims, would private companies be subject to that? This order aims to uphold First Amendment rights by prohibiting federal officials from engaging in activities that could suppress constitutionally protected speech. It also mandates an investigation into past government actions that may have infringed upon free speech. Key provisions. The order emphasizes the United States' commitment to securing the rights of its citizens to engage in constitutionally protected speech. It explicitly prohibits federal officers, employees, or agents from engaging in or facilitating any conduct that would abridge free speech. Investigation directive. The Attorney General is tasked with investigating federal government activities over the past 4 years, which seems like what he said he wasn't going to do. Context and implications. This executive order reflects concerns that, under the guise of combating misinformation, the federal government has previously pressured social media companies to suppress certain viewpoints, thereby infringing on free speech rights. Critics argue that such government involvement in content moderation can lead to censorship and the promotion of specific narratives. The order has sparked debate. Supporters assert that it is a necessary step to protect free expression from government overreach. Opponents, however, contend it may hinder efforts to address misinformation and could be used to challenge Listen, I'll say this. I'm real sick of seeing these verified accounts on X that are not very clearly not the name that it says on.
The parody accounts, I hate them. They're so stupid.
It should have to say something because I haven't personally fallen for it yet, but I've seen a lot of people falling for it and then I just seen JFK Jr. verified. I mean, really?
Everybody falls for the RFK parody account too, and it's really annoying because it says such outlandish things, and you're like, and people are like, look what RFK said. It's like, No, it's not.
I guess it's probably fine because I think he maybe did. Is there a different color if you're the actual? I don't know. Is there like a color scheme, Graham? I think you're the X expert, aren't you?
Oh, are you kidding me, dude?
Like, is there a way to know it's the real Nigel Farage? Because now I'm looking at a Nigel Farage thing and I don't even know. I'm questioning myself. I'm like, is this the real one? Is this actually him? Is this a, you know?
Well, it sounds like the solution is putting pixels and technology underneath your skin. Wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you must need ID to get on to X. I mean, this is where it's going to go.
You already do, don't you? You wanted my ID.
Yeah, that's how you get verified.
That's how they got my ID.
I know, but I guess you can still be anonymous, though. I mean, I guess
assume they wanted my ID for that check mark so that I couldn't say I was fucking Charlie Brown, or
you could be Charlie Brown.
And the thing is, if I try and change my name, they go over it again. You know, they'll take your check mark away and review it, and then so how can you change it to John F. Kennedy Jr.? I just don't understand how. Unless that's the guy's name, and it's just like a coincidence. It's a different one, and he's
that's the problem. What if you have a whole bunch of Bill Smiths? I mean, you're gonna have a lot of Bill Smiths out there. What do they do?
And one of them just starts running a bunch of like Bill Smith conspiracy theories because he's capitalizing on his name. So there just happens to be a JFK out there that's like, I'm gonna make some money. Anyway, we should head to second half of the show.
Well, so can I say one thing about that before we move on? Because
yeah.
I think it's important, and it's an ability to talk about the Roman Empire. So here's the thing that concerns me. If you look at, as much as I love what some of these executive orders have had in them, the thing that terrifies me is a president with hundreds of executive